I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, the news has come in that Alexander Acosta has resigned as Labor Secretary in the Trump administration. And I want to take some time in this video to focus in on what happened in Palm Beach in 2006, 7, 8, and 9, that time period when they were laying the foundations for the case against Epstein, all the way up to when they struck that deal that has led to Acosta's resignation recently. Can you make sense to myself and to all our viewers as to what was going on? You have, Alex Acosta, you have the Palm Beach, state attorney, Barry Krischer. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
Krischer, I think.
Krischer, yeah.
Krischer, yeah.
And the interaction between the two that led to this plea deal that everyone is talking about with Epstein.
Yeah. Yes. I think the thing to understand about these sort of cases is that the United States, like many federal states, operates two systems of law that coexist and which run in parallel with each other. There is the law of the individual states that make up the United States. Now, Palm Beach is in Florida, and Florida has its own legal system and its own set of laws and its own police force and its own prosecutors, district attorneys. And then there is the federal law of the United States, which is administered by the Justice Department, headed by the Attorney General, whose local top senior officials in the various parts of the United States are federal prosecutors based in federal districts, the relevant federal district in this case being southern Florida. And of course, the enforcement agency that enforces federal law is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is a federal agency. Now, what sometimes happens in cases which are extremely serious and which the local police and state attorneys find that they can't really deal with is that they refer the case to the FBI and the Justice Department, which obviously has far greater resources than the individual states and district attorney offices do. And sometimes the FBI then takes over the case, and that's where the FBI comes in. Now, what we need to understand about the Epstein case is it began with the local police and district attorney office in Palm Beach. Now, there's a police force which started to investigate the case there, and it was reporting to the local prosecutor or district attorney, who is a man called Barry Krischer. Now, the police apparently were the people who did most of the initial investigation. And they found out that in Palm Beach, Epstein was running this terrible ring with underage girls providing sex, and that this was a hugely abusive situation there that was going on there. And the police were reporting all this to Krischer, the local prosecutor, and Krischer was very keen, and he was green-lighting the police investigation. At some point, however, it seems that Krischer began to become increasingly uneasy about it. He may have felt that Epstein was too well connected and too powerful for a case like that to be successful, or there may have been some other reasons. There's been some suggestions that because some of these victims had admitted that they'd been taking soft drugs, cannabis and marijuana, that would mean that they would not have been strong witnesses, which I, by the way, find a bizarre reasoning. But anyway, that's what's been suggested. Anyway, Krischer apparently began to lose interest in the case or became nervous about it. He convened a grand jury, as he's a right to do as a local prosecutor. This should have been a local grand jury, not a federal grand jury. And this local grand jury returned an indictment which only charged Epstein with a comparatively minor offense of solicitation. Now, solicitation means going out and basically soliciting sex, money for sex. I mean, that kind of thing. But as a minor offence, it did not, and this is the key point, involve the really core problem, which is that many of the girls who were involved were underage. And that aspect of it, Epstein was not being charged with. So the local police were apparently very unhappy with this and felt that the local prosecutor, Krischer, was not taking this case as seriously as he should have done. And so they, in turn, decided to take this case to the federal authorities, in other words, to the Justice Department and to the FBI. As I said, that's what they tend to do when it looks like a case is too big for them to handle. So it then went to the FBI. The FBI then basically looked over the evidence that the local police assembled, decided that there clearly was a case, and they took it to the local federal prosecutor, who was the federal prosecutor working in the Southern District of Florida, which covers this territory, who was Alex Acosta. Alex Acosta agreed that there clearly was a serious case here, and that Epstein needed to be prosecuted for it. But as we all know, rather than pursue the case to trial, he decided, for reasons we don't fully understand yet, to agree to this plea bargain with Epstein, which resulted in Epstein admitting, I think, to only one offense and spending only a couple of months in an open prison, which he was allowed to leave for 16 hours of every working day. So it doesn't perhaps show Acosta in a terribly good light, because, as I said, I certainly don't think he should have agreed to that plea bargain. But at least Acosta and the FBI took the case seriously, which the local prosecutor, Barry Krischer, perhaps didn't do, and which the grand jury that Krischer, the local grand jury that Krischer convened, also failed to do. The point I think that this all comes to is that it's quite clear to me that Epstein was a very powerful man, clearly a very well-connected man, clearly able to call on many friends, and local prosecutors like Krischer seem to have been nervous about going after him. And even federal prosecutors like Acosta, though clearly Acosta was prepared to take it further, even he, in the end, pulled his punches. Now, I think we need to know an awful lot more about this case. And that's why, as I said before, we need a proper trial so that all the evidence comes out and we find out exactly why Epstein was, it seems, able to play the system so well that he was able to conduct this affair, as I said, his ring, so successfully without himself being implicated.
Okay, Alexander, another part of the case which I have a little bit of difficulty understanding, and for which Acosta has gotten a lot of criticism for, was the fact where they try to explain that Acosta failed to keep the victims informed as to what was going on, the negotiations and the evidence. Can you explain that part a little bit? Because Acosta is getting a lot of criticism for that aspect of the case.
Yeah. Indeed, he is. And as I understand it, a federal judge has even said that he might have broken the law, federal law, by not notifying Epstein's victims of the fact that he was engaging in these negotiations with Epstein and had come to this plea bargain deal with Epstein. Now, I'm not an expert on American prosecutorial law or practice, but as a principle, as a good principle of investigation, a prosecutor certainly ought to be keeping the victims informed properly of what is happening, and his decision not to proceed to a full-blown trial, then he should explain to them why that is and keep them fully informed of what kind of a plea bargain he is pursuing. And if Acosta didn't do that, then I would say the criticism of him is justified. I'm not here to protect or defend Acosta. What I would say about Acosta is that he is not the only person who was involved in this affair who came up short. Arguably, the local officials in Palm Beach bear more blame for what happened than he does. At least he seems to have worked towards obtaining some kind of conviction of Epstein, and even if that was done improperly through a plea bargain, rather than let the whole thing basically die with this very, very insignificant charge of soliciting, which really didn't go remotely far enough to justify what had happened.
Is that done? Is that done to where you notify the victims for their protection? Is that the reasoning there, to keep them informed in order so that they know that, this person that they may be afraid of or that abused them?
It's partly
going through some sort of some negotiation to be set free or a lighter sentence or something like that?
I'm sure that's part of the reason, but the justification for it is that victims are people who've suffered, and the state, in the form either of the federal prosecutor or the local district attorney, is in effect acting, if you like, as not exactly their lawyer, but as somebody who has a responsibility to them as victims. And in order to discharge that responsibility, he or she must keep the victims informed of the principal decisions that are being made. That doesn't mean that the prosecutor is required to share everything with the victims. I think the point that sometimes people make, which is quite wrong, is that it's supposed sometimes that the prosecutor is required to share all the evidence with the victims. In other words, show them everything. That isn't right. That goes too far. But the victims ought to be at least kept in some kind of picture about what is going on. And in a case where a decision has been made to seek a plea bargain, which is less than a trial, significantly less than a trial. Bear in mind that at a trial, part of the point of a trial, it is to give victims an opportunity to have their say, to tell their story. So if there's a case for a trial, that ought to be a consideration in deciding whether to go forward with it. Now, if they were denied a trial and are denied an opportunity to have their say in court, whereas, as I said, because, as I said, Acosta decided to go for a plea bargain, I would say in a case like this that was definitely wrong.
Okay, now Acosta gave a lengthy press conference, and it was a pretty transparent press conference, I would say, before he resigned, where he tried to explain his logic in getting the plea deal. And it sounds to me that the way you've explained it is that kind of seems to be in line with what Acosta claims as well, in that I had to get this plea deal, otherwise Epstein would have gotten effectively what was even less than a slap on the wrist. Yes. And so it seems that, he said, at least I got something out of this, where you have a lot of people demanding that Acosta should have been able to lock Epstein up for, 50 years for the terrible things he did. Epstein was saying, look, that's all I had to work with. While you have the Palm Beach state attorney, this Barry Krischer, who's come out and said, no, Acosta's not going to rewrite history. He had the police investigation, the documents, and an indictment wrapped up in a nice bow, and he could have pressed forward with it. So it's kind of like this, Palm Beach state attorney is deflecting and throwing it on Acosta, and Acosta saying, look, I did, given what I had, and the fact that Epstein was going to walk, I got something out of nothing.
Well, I have to say this. The local police, took the decision to go to the federal agencies, to the FBI, and to the local federal prosecutor, who was Acosta, obviously because they weren't happy with what the local attorney, who was Barry Krischer, was doing. I mean, it's difficult to understand why they would have done that if they felt that the local attorney was doing enough. And bear in mind that some of the things that Acosta has been criticized for, like, this very lenient sentence that that Epstein got in the end, it seems that was the responsibility, again, of the local authorities, not the federal authorities. So this being investigated and prosecuted, as I understand it, as a local as opposed to a federal crime at that time. Now, maybe
that's key. That's key. At that time. At that time.
Exact. At that time. Now, I don't want to, as I said, I'm not here to defend Acosta, who, as you correctly say, is doing a very good job of it himself. I mean, he knows this case in ways that I don't. He knows the details of his case and his own thinking in ways that I can't. But I do think that it ought to have been possible in 2006, 2009, during this period, to have taken this an awful lot further than it was, based on the clues, which were all over the place. I mean, people coming forward, underage girls, things apparently being found in the garbage, which Epstein had left, disgusting things. And of course, as we know, if there'd been a full investigation, well, it seems lots of these cameras in this island that he owned, in the house, and all that, or in the buildings that they were
bizarre stuff.
Bizarre stuff. Now, but it seems that at this time, most of that was not fully or properly understood. And so it wasn't taken as far as I think it should have been. But there's always a big interaction here. There's the local police, who carried out what appears to have been a thorough investigation within the limits that the local prosecutor, who is Krischer, permitted them to, and were clearly concerned about the fact that the local prosecutor wasn't taking it as far as they thought he should have done. And then, of course, there was the decision of the FBI, and basically to limit their investigation to largely to what the local police had uncovered. Now, as I said, I suspect if this thing had been taken further then, as it should have been taken, then a lot more would have come out then. And I come back to this point that we've made before. The big question is why it wasn't taken further, why Epstein seems to have acted with so much impunity and so much belief in his own impunity. And, that's the big question, which a proper trial now needs to investigate and get to the bottom of.
Yeah, it's like this is a situation where either all these parties involved, from the police to the Palm Beach State Attorney to Acosta, either and or showed a lot of incompetence in how they handled this case, as well as dealing with a man that was very powerful and probably had a lot of phone calls made on his behalf.
Yes.
And, may have told a lot of the people involved to stand down. This type of combination of forces that led to this sweetheart deal that he got at the time, in which we're talking about today, given the facts of what's going on. It's we're forgetting what happened in 2009. We're trying to put context to what happened in 2009 because we're all sitting here saying, this guy's been doing this stuff for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And, we still haven't gotten him, and now we've come to this.
Yeah, well, quite. And I mean, it's fascinating how this whole thing has really restarted again now. And again, one wonders why. And I can't help thinking that it's partly in order, once again, to sort of damage Donald Trump, because Acosta is, of course, his Labor Secretary. But, I come back to this. This is a terrible case. This is a terrible man doing terrible things. And we need to have this thing properly investigated, fully investigated, with the whole case brought before the court and tried properly. I hope that there will be no plea bargains this time, because that would be a great betrayal, both of the victims and of the American justice system. And it will leave far too many questions unresolved. I mean, we were talking the other day in our previous video about the fact that, why was he able to act with so much impunity? Well, given that apparently he had cameras all over the place, I mean, one has to worry that he was also partly running some kind of blackmail scam. and that may have been a factor
on behalf
behind
of
some. Well, good question. Well,
because Acosta does say, the Daily Beast revealed, and we've gone over this before, that Acosta did mention during his interview for the Trump White House, when they referenced this case, that Acosta said, I was told to, and I'm paraphrasing, I was told to back off because, Epstein belongs to the intelligence agencies, whatever that means.
Whatever that means. And of course, we don't know. And we don't know. Let's not speculate. But it is interesting, and that is concerning in itself. Though I really do want to make the point also that there is ample witness testimony that Epstein himself was a gross abuser, a gross sexual abuser. I don't think there's any question about that. So clearly, this was partly something that he was doing for his own indulgence, his own terrible indulgence. But I mean, the other thing is, of course, if he was in a position to blackmail people, putting aside the question of whether he might have been blackmailing them on behalf of an intelligence agency, I mean, he might also have been blackmailing them on his own behalf. And here we come to the big question, the big unanswered question about Epstein, which is how he made his money, which nobody seems to understand. I mean, there are lots of unanswered questions, and we need to know the answers to these questions in order to dissipate this terrible cloud that now hangs over the American justice system, which has clearly fallen short, and over the United States, because this is a terrible crime that was committed in the United States, and to do justice to the victims who have suffered terribly, both as a result of the gross abuse that was inflicted upon them, and as a result of the fact that they were denied justice before.
They need to get this one right. I agree with you, Alexander, because going back to the Harvey Weinstein, to Russiagate, to Jesse Smollett, to what they did to Kavanaugh and that hoax.
Yes.
This one is magnitudes much more disturbing.
Well, I agree.
Than all of those cases, and they need to get this one right.
I have to say I agree. I mean, what Harvey Weinstein has been accused of, and it's important to stress, actually, that he's been accused of it. He's not yet been convicted of it.
That one hasn't finalized yet.
I mean, it hasn't finalized yet. But I mean, from what I understand of the case against him, I mean, he's accused of abusing his position, his power in Hollywood to basically extort women to sleep with him. But as far as I know, it's not remotely a situation like the one that Epstein is accused of, where he seems not to have extorted women who were, overage women, adult women, to sleep with him. He seems to have essentially prostituted them in grotesque ways. And that's something which I think, as I said, should be pursued, and pursued vigorously, because the victims here, being very young people, in many cases children, deserve justice, and justice can only be done through a proper trial.
Yeah, this is a fight for the soul of America. It really is.
Well, indeed, I have to say, I mean, you brought up Russiagate. If we can conduct a $30 or $40 million investigation, which produces a 448-page report, which comes to a conclusion that nothing actually happened, about allegations of collusion, which I always thought were completely fantastical and had no evidence behind them, then we can certainly spend a small fraction of that amount to prosecute a crime, a genuine crime or series of crimes, in which there were actual victims, and in which case, as I said, the crimes were of a particularly gross and horrible nature. I mean, it will show an extraordinary lack of proportion in the United States if the Russiagate fantasy or conspiracy theory is taken so seriously, and the Epstein case is not.
Well put. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on that notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. Please share this channel with everybody you know outside of YouTube. We are on BitChute. Share this channel on Gab, on Minds, Facebook, Twitter. Help get the word out there about the Duran. You can also get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on Soundcloud and on iTunes. And also, please donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. The links in the description box down below. Or, of course, you can go to the Duran shop and you can pick up a polo, a gray polo with a black double-headed eagle, like what Alexander Mercouris is wearing this evening. And Alexander, I heard the clinging and the clamoring of mugs, the magic mugs, which improve your geopolitical IQ by a minimum of 10 points and a maximum of 200 points. Alexander.
Oh, absolutely. The maximum, I would say, Alex. Now, can I just say to our viewers, as some of you may have realized, over the last couple of days, I was at an undisclosed location in England. I'm going to provide you with some clues in a few minutes about where that was. But this is not fully a holiday, because we at the Duran, of course, never go on holiday. We're always keeping our eye out on the news. We're always doing videos for you from these mysterious locations we go to, and we always keep you informed of what we're doing. But it was a wonderful part of England. It is a wonderful part of England. It's full of literary associations. I will now give the literary-minded amongst you some clues. Isaac Walton, he of The Complete Angler, the person who did the fishing, he was there. Those of you who are interested in medieval literature will know that Sir Gawain, one of King Arthur's knights, was also there and did a very brave deed there against a giant called the Green Knight. And of course, Sherlock Holmes was also there, solving the problem of the Priory School. And last but not least, Mr. Rochester and Jane Eyre were also present at that particular part of England, occupying in a particular house that is in that area. And of course, how better to walk around this district wearing a Duran shirt like the one I'm wearing. Well, actually, I was wearing mainly my long sleeve shirt, but in the evenings when it was very hot and I would go out for dinner, I would wear this beautiful polo shirt that I'm wearing now, because I should say it was also a social event and I was meeting all sorts of people, and this is perfect on a hot summer's day or hot summer's evening to wear a beautiful shirt like this, 100% cotton, beautifully dyed with our lovely, beautiful double-headed eagle emblem there, marvelously embroidered in. And of course, I was also wearing my magnificent long sleeves shirt when I was walking around the countryside and finding that it was superb for hill walking with my dogs. And if you go to Instagram, you will find a photo which Alex has put up there of myself in that shirt with my dogs in the countryside. And what other thing to do when you've been on a long 16-mile walk, as I did on a number of occasions, come home in the evening, then drink tea from one of these fantastic mugs that you see before me. Of course, I took these mugs with me to this part of England. I drank tea, good, solid, royal blend mostly. That's a dark tea, which I drink with milk, very refreshing, from this marvelous 15-ounce mug, which has our own symbol there, the double-headed eagle, which is the Duran eagle, which points to both the east and the west, showing you the geopolitical spread of the Duran. We cover both east and west. And here, of course, we have my wife's mug. She was also drinking from her mug whilst we were on holiday. And it's also the double-headed eagle, this time the double-headed eagle of Moscow, with St. George, patron saint of Moscow, patron saint of Greece, patron saint of England, slaying the dragon of untruth and false news, as the Duran does. And these mugs kept us refreshed and invigorated so we could do 16-mile walks, return home in the evening, catch up on the news, and do our videos and enlarge our mind. Now, what other mugs could do that for you?
That's right. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. The link for the shop, by the way, is in the description box as well. So pick up a mug, pick up a shirt. Till next time, everybody, take care.